After a young boy was struck and killed by a car, his body inexplicably turned up back at his home. The sheriff assumed the boy's mother, overcome with grief, must have dug up the grave herself. But looking at the muddy footprints on the floor and the boy's torn and bloodied fingers, the coroner standing nearby came to a different conclusion. The body had most likely crawled out of the grave on its own. A moment later, a cup on the table toppled over by itself. The shaken sheriff walked out immediately. The next day, one of the boy's classmates came to the house to say goodbye to his friend. He tapped on the window and the corpse slowly turned to look at him. That evening, a woman was washing vegetables in the kitchen when she heard strange sounds rising from the drain. She leaned down to listen more closely. It sounded like someone whispering from inside the pipes. When her husband, away, came home from work and asked why dinner wasn't ready, she told him what she'd heard. He pressed his ear to the drain for a while but heard nothing. He told her it was probably just the old pipes, combined with the renovation work the neighbors had been doing lately. After reassuring her, he went to bed. In the middle of the night, his wife got up to use the bathroom. Away was jolted awake by a loud banging on the wall. Furious, he grabbed his shoe and hammered back against it, demanding the noise stop. It did for a few seconds, then started again. Unable to take it any longer, he went to his neighbor Ma Peter's door to confront him, but no matter how long he held down the buzzer, there was no answer. Away went back to bed, but the banging returned this time. It seemed to be coming from inside his own bathroom. He strode toward it and threw the door open. His wife was floating in the air, covered in blood, her body slamming itself against the wall over and over. He lunged forward to stop her but was completely powerless. All he could do was watch as she was beaten, blow by blow, into an unrecognizable mass. After her inexplicable death, Away was detained as the prime suspect. But the person sent to question him was no ordinary detective. He was an expert from the Paranormal Investigation Bureau, flanked by his assistant and a coroner. The expert spread a series of photographs across the table, crime scenes from recent years, every victim killed in exactly the same way as Away's wife. Despite lengthy investigations, every case had gone cold. The expert was hoping Away might provide a lead. He asked whether anything unusual had happened recently. After a brief pause, Away mentioned his neighbor, Ma Peter. The man had been acting strangely, shutting himself inside and refusing to leave, renovating at all hours of the day and night. At the name Ma Peter, the assistant's expression changed. Just days earlier, Peter had called the bureau himself. He'd reported that something was wrong in his home. He kept feeling as though someone was under his bed while he slept, but every time he checked, there was nothing there. Stranger still, whenever he lay back down, the bedside lamp would go out on its own. Fumbling in the dark to plug it back in, he had glimpsed a pair of unnaturally long legs. Terrified, Peter had yanked the covers over his head. The next morning, he found the room in complete disarray. The disturbances kept repeating, and he kept calling the bureau, but reports like his came in by the dozens each day, and a customer service representative told him he would need to provide documented evidence of a paranormal event before a case could be opened. Determined to prove he wasn't imagining things, Peter bought a video camera, pointed it at the head of his bed, and went to sleep. He woke suddenly in the middle of the night to find the camera had fallen to the floor. On the wall beside him, a dark shadow shifted then vanished the moment he switched on the light. He grabbed the camera and reviewed the footage. The recording showed a naked, grotesque figure standing at his bedside, staring at him for a long time before quietly stepping into the wardrobe. Then the camera fell, and the sound of it hitting the floor had woken him. What Peter realized, watching the footage, was that the figure was still in his wardrobe. He retrieved a handgun from the room next door and inched toward the wardrobe, step by step. He opened it empty. Confused, he raised the camera to review the footage again. He never noticed that the wardrobe door behind him had silently swung back open, and the creature had stepped out. Peter had not left his home since. One afternoon, a football flew into his yard, followed by a small boy who chased it in. Before leaving, the boy paused to take a drink from the outdoor tap. For reasons that were never entirely clear, this made Peter furious. Seconds later, the boy was hit by a passing bus and killed on the spot. He was buried. 4 days later, his body came back. That was when the scene at the very beginning unfolded. The expert, upon learning of it, came immediately. A town of just a few thousand people and an extraordinary cluster of paranormal incidents. He was certain they were connected. To prevent panic, the coroner decided to quietly store the boy's body in a refrigerator and transfer it back to the cemetery after dark. The sheriff offered to help, then heard something strange coming from inside the refrigerator. He leaned in closer and realized it was the sound of a child crying. The expert recognized they were dealing with something serious. He began organizing a joint investigation, but before they could start, Away's wife was killed in the bathroom. The group went to the detention center, secured Away's consent, and in the dead of night, fully equipped, descended on the town. They split into 3 teams. The sheriff and the assistant would go to Ma Peter's house. The coroner would monitor any changes to the boy's body. The expert would examine Away's home. From that point forward, things took a turn for the genuinely terrifying. The sheriff and the assistant arrived at Peter's house to find the power completely cut. The walls were covered in strange symbols. The sheriff had decades of experience working cases, but even he was sweating through his shirt. The assistant swept the rooms with a detection instrument and immediately registered an anomaly in the kitchen. Every knife and fork in the drawer had been magnetically pulled flat against the wooden cabinet panel. That meant something from outside their world was present. While the assistant was excitedly examining the cutlery, a kitchen knife drove itself through his palm. The sheriff rushed to help, but no matter what they tried, the blade wouldn't come free. Blood was streaming down into the cabinet. The sheriff drew his gun and told the assistant to open the cabinet door. Sensing something seriously wrong, both of them backed out of the kitchen quickly. After bandaging the assistant's hand, the badly shaken sheriff called the coroner to say that his heart condition was acting up and he needed to leave immediately. While they were talking, the coroner noticed a silhouette standing at the window in the sheriff's room, only visible from outside, through the glass. When the line went quiet, the sheriff looked for the assistant, wanting him to come along to check on the coroner. But the assistant had made a new discovery. He led the sheriff to the bedroom and pointed at the space beneath Peter's bed. The sheriff crouched down, nothing there. Then the assistant walked to the foot of the bed and lifted the blanket. This time, the sheriff saw a pair of enormous feet. The assistant explained, "The world exists on two planes, light and dark. Creatures like malevolent spirits inhabit the dark plane, invisible to us from straight on. A shift in perspective is all it takes to perceive them." The sheriff had reached his limit. He left Peter's house immediately, intending to collect the coroner and get out. But when he arrived at the boy's home, all he found was broken glass on the floor. Before he could make sense of it, something knocked from inside the liquor cabinet. He turned and saw a bloody handprint on the cabinet door. Steeling himself, he drew his gun and pulled it open, nothing unusual inside. Yet the sounds continued. The assistant's words came back to him. What if he changed his angle? After a moment's hesitation, he moved the cabinet away from the wall and broke through the wooden panel at the back. Behind it was the coroner, eye sealed shut with some kind of black viscous substance, face twisted beyond recognition. He had already become something else. The sheriff sprinted to Away's home to find the expert who had just made his own discovery. Peter, missing for days, had been found wedged inside a crack in the living room wall. Before the expert could attempt to communicate with him, the sheriff burst in and poured out everything: the kitchen, the assistant, the coroner. He begged for help. The expert tried to reach the assistant over the radio. No response. He did his best to calm the sheriff, and then shared what his years of research had led him to believe: a second dimension exists alongside our own, home to deeply malevolent beings. This matched exactly what the assistant had said. The paranormal activity in this town, the expert concluded, was caused by contamination of the groundwater beneath Peter's house, tainted by the dark dimension, spreading influence and pulling people under the control of these entities. He had spent years studying them without ever encountering one directly. The next second, a creature appeared. It snapped the expert's neck. Already overwhelmed, the sheriff collapsed from a cardiac episode. The creature crawled out from inside the wall crack. When the sheriff came to, he recognized a familiar figure standing over him. It was the boy's mother. He begged her to help him get out. She said nothing, only led him to her car. When he reached for the door, he found the boy's corpse already sitting in the back seat. The sheriff understood in an instant she had lost her mind entirely. Fighting through the pain, he forced himself into the driver's seat and headed for the hospital. Then a monstrous shape hurled itself at the car. The shock cleared his heart condition on the spot. He floored the accelerator and didn't stop for over 10 minutes. Pulled over at the roadside trying to collect himself, he heard voices over the radio, colleagues announcing they were heading to the town to investigate. He tried to warn them off, but the radio went dead. He turned back. He couldn't let them walk into this. He went to the trunk, took out a fuel canister, and prepared to end it once and for all. But when he opened the door to the boy's house, he found the mother had hanged herself. The boy's body had returned to his bedroom. Suppressing the fear clawing at him, the sheriff doused the buildings in fuel. But every time he struck a match, it went out. He tried again and again from different positions, nothing worked. Then he spotted the coroner, now fully transformed into something inhuman. He drew his gun and fired at the fuel pooled on the ground. The fire caught. Everything burned. Sometime later, a group of investigators tracked down the detained Away. They produced a photograph of the sheriff and asked if he recognized him. As it turned out, after the fire, search teams recovered bodies at the scene, but the sheriff was never among them. He had simply vanished, as though he had never existed. Then the investigators showed Away a photo of the assistant. Away looked at it, then pointed at something directly behind them. A stool came flying across the room. The screen cut to black.